So hello everybody and welcome to our first webinar of 2024. And what better way to start than talking about how VR can level up students' job interview practice. So thank you everybody who's joining us today, or if you're watching this back on repeat. I'm Sophie Thompson, co-founder and CEO of VirtualSpeech, which is an online platform that blends e-learning with AI practice exercises available both online and in virtual reality. We want this webinar to be interactive, so please put your questions or comments in the Q&A box and I'll make sure that we ask today's guest. And today's guest is Phenix Culbertson. Phenix is Associate Director of Employer Relations in the Graduate Career Advancement Centre at Georgia State University Robinson College of Business. He is also a doctoral candidate in the Public Administration Programme at Valdosta State University, who we have actually been working with for a few years. So I'm very excited that Phenix is joining us. Phenix's research interests focus on the diffusion of various innovations, including virtual reality and artificial intelligence, and their use within career centres. Phenix employed the MetaQuest 2 and VirtualSpeech for data collection to explore the perception of career centre leaders around the accessibility, appropriateness and feasibility of implementing VR and AI within their organisations. So thank you very much for joining us, Phenix, and sharing more insights about your research.
Thank you, Sophie. I appreciate that bio. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Excited to talk about my research, but really how virtual speech is so beneficial in preparing our students for interviews, whether you operate in a career center or some other organization that provides that type of development for students. So super excited to talk about it. And I hope you all find some interesting things that you might be able to share with anybody you know that works in a career center, or perhaps you work in a career center yourself. Feel free afterwards to personally reach out. I'll be sure to share my LinkedIn and happy to chat with anybody that wants to learn more.
Amazing. Thank you. So I will share my screen. So for everybody else's benefit, the format of today is going to be a bit of a presentation, first of all, by Phenix, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So I've got some Q&A prepared, but obviously we would love for you to let us know any questions you have too. So I will share my screen. Can you all see the slides? There we go. I'm not used to SharePoint. There we go. Right, let's get going.
All right, everybody. Well, again, thank you so much for joining. I'm excited to lead this webinar with Sophie. Job interview practice, a careers perspective. Again, my name is Phenix Culbertson. I'm ABD, a doctoral candidate for Valdosta State University Doctor of Public Administration program. Currently, I'm the Associate Director of Employer Relations for the Graduate Career Advancement Center at the Robinson College of Business, Georgia State University. So before we get into this amazing technology of what VR and what virtual speech and what AI does, I really want to provide a picture of the landscape of career centers in higher education at this time. So as many of you might be aware, there has been across the nation decreased enrollment in colleges and universities. And so students and potential students are really fixating on the value proposition degree. Is the value I'm going to get for the money and the time and the effort and the resources I spend to obtain this degree, will I see that return on investment? And so it is very important that we in career centers understand what the value proposition is, and that when we pitch it to the students, it is accurate and it aligns with what it is we're trying to do. And so most students, especially on the graduate level, which is the students that I support for the graduate business school, I would argue that 90% of them come to school not because it's a graduate school, not because their parents told them to, because they were nudged or forced, but they have their own desires to usually advance in their career. Now, this can be an internal growth. So perhaps they love their company, they love their industry, but they want to promote into another functional area, or they wanted to promote into a leadership opportunity. That is an advancement in their career. Or maybe it's external. They want to try a new industry, or they want to go into a new functional area. And so the value proposition of the degree is that at the end, is it going to advance their career? And if it is not, is it worth their time to actually go through this process to become a graduate of a graduate program or even undergraduate degrees? And so the degree payoff is very important. And so part of that degree payoff is how long is it going to take for me to make the money or the increase in my salary that'll match with the amount of money I spent on the degree? And so that is very important, and it's a very consideration that we have to be aware of as career centers in higher education, because us as career centers are integral in the advancement of our students' careers, because we are the ones that provide them the career readiness development. We are the ones that coach them and build their social capital to expand their network with employers and alums from our institutions. And so it is very important that we in career centers are able to scale career readiness so that we can reach as many of our students as we can while still providing them with a high touch or immersive experience. And so this is the landscape of career centers in higher education. So for those of you that maybe aren't in career centers, this is just a little background and context of some of the challenges that we are facing and why it is so important that career advancement be an integral component of any higher education institution, because the value proposition of the degree is that they're going to be able to advance in their career, especially as it relates to graduate school. Undergraduate students, sometimes they're coached and motivated by their parents. Many of them are still technically like minors or 17 and 18 when they're applying for undergraduate. And so there may be some of that there. And so, but even then, those parents or whoever is encouraging them to go to school, or even if it's the students themselves that have that own desire to fulfill an undergraduate education, they want to see the ROI. Am I going to be employed after this degree, or am I going to be in the same situation that I was without the degree?
Exactly.
So, career readiness, real quick. Career readiness has been defined by National Association of Colleges and Employers. And so, this national association is like our research and the holy grail for career centers. This is who we look to for research, for trends, for high impact practices. They collect data across the nation about job outlook, are students getting employed, what are employers looking for in students, what type of skills do they need. And so anything that relates to career centers, a lot of us often look up to National Association of Colleges and Employers because they really set the standard and guide what we do in our work. So what is career readiness? It is the foundation from which to demonstrate requisite core competencies that broadly prepare the college educated for success in the workplace and lifelong career management. And so you'll see that there's 8 competencies right here that NACE has delegated, that if a student or individual can obtain these 8 competencies, then they then will have and be career ready. What we call it in our department in the graduate CAC, we call it market ready. So just preparing the students to go into the market. Career readiness, same thing, just, different verbiage. And so you'll see 4 highlighted. These are the ones that I think are most aligned with what virtual reality and artificial intelligence can do. However, it could be argued that each 8 of these competencies have some type of representation that could be gleaned from VR and AI. But for my research specifically, and to kind of narrow the focus of the competencies that I'm including, I kind of focus on career and self-development, because that is career readiness at the core. Teaching them how to interview is part of that career self-development. Communication, VR is so important, and virtual speech is literally a platform that is made to improve communication across many different fields and many different modalities. But the common thread of virtual speech is that it's improving communication, be it verbal, public speaking, business negotiating, interviewing. All of those are communication. So communication is a very big thread across virtual speech that aligns with career readiness. And then professionalism. In order to show up well, to have a good brand, to represent themselves well, and to appear professional to employers or to potential graduate schools or to potential fellowship opportunities, our students have to appear professional. And part of that comes through that interview preparation and practice. And then, of course, technology, right? Technology is mind blowing. The way it has advanced, especially since COVID, and how accelerated things happen. Things that people thought would happen in 2030 are happening now, because COVID really shifted the world of work. It shifted the way we use technology, and it made us realize some things that we could do with technology sooner because we had to, because of the situation that we were in. And so these are some of the competencies that focus on career readiness. And I believe that virtual speech and the VR and AI components of virtual speech allow students to develop this career readiness. So virtual reality, this is what the big, everyone's talking about VR, everyone's talking about AI. I get super excited about this topic. In all transparency, the excitement and even the interest in VR came from my doctoral chair, Dr. Bobby Tickner. She actually founded and implemented the first virtual reality lab at Valdosta State University. And so Dr. Tickner has been a long time mentor since I was an undergraduate student. And so when she kind of demonstrated and showed me some of the, the great things VR was doing, it got me super excited because, it's one thing to do research, but it's another thing to actually be passionate and interested in the research that you're doing and using that passion to kind of fuel your motivation. And so virtual reality is super exciting. And so just to kind of lay some basic foundational things about what VR is. VR is a simulated environment created by technology using 3D visuals that can be interacted with in a seemingly real way through user input with transmission devices. And this definition is actually also by, you'll see cited below, Dr. Bobby Tickner. And so there are two very important principles of virtual reality that allow it to be what it is. First, you have immersion. And immersion is a user's real world awareness. So think about being immersed into something, immersed into a new environment, immersed into a new work culture, going to a new country and immersing yourself in the way they do life. And so there are three levels of immersion. You have fully immersive, semi-immersive, and non-immersive. So I would argue that the quest is it's between semi and fully. It's definitely more semi-immersive. Something that will be non-immersive is like the Sims game or platforms that allow you to practice interviews, but you're not really in the environment. You're not immersed into it the same way you are with VR, but you're kind of looking at the screen as if you were doing an interview. And so that immersion is a very big piece because the greater immersion that there is, then there's a greater sense of presence. And so presence is really the state of being. So it is the psychological state of the user accepting, interacting, and engaging across physical, social, and emotional aspects. And so these two components or principles that I like to call them really guide what virtual reality is, and they make it to be so much beneficial to our students. And so when people ask why VR, why should I use VR instead of these other things? I often tell them because it is more immersive and your students or your clients are going to feel a greater sense of presence in that environment, which is going to improve their belonging. Because if I've been somewhere before and I've navigated that environment and I've communicated in that environment and did some things and have some familiarity, I might feel a greater sense of belonging, that I belong in that environment because I've been there before, even if in the virtual world. And so I feel a greater sense of presence. And so right now in any institution, belonging is very important because students want to feel like not only do they belong at the school, but that they belong in whatever career that they want to go to. And so it is us as career center leaders, as career center coaches, as higher education professionals to prepare our students and provide them those opportunities that make them feel like they belong, they have a sense of presence there, and they've been immersed into that environment before. So I hear this all the time. I usually hear three perspectives of AI. People are either really for it, they're really against it. Well, I would say four. They're somewhere in the middle, or they kind of just don't know or don't care, right? And so one of the biggest things or the conversations going on is AI going to take over all the human jobs, right? Is AI going to make it to where I'm no longer going to be employed because the technology is going to do it? There's different, arguments and beliefs about this. My view on artificial intelligence is that the technology will still need humans to implement it, to maintain it, to support it, to lay the infrastructure, right? So I do not think the human piece goes away, but I think some of the tasks that are often repeated, redundant, there's a duplication of efforts. Artificial intelligence has the ability to eliminate some of that so that some of that time spent with employees can be focused on other things outside of technological things that the artificial intelligence provides. And so John McCarthy back in 2004, when not as many people were talking about AI, right, in 2004, the way they're talking about it today. I mean, for example, ChatGPT, is a recent, and we'll get into that. But even back in 2004, they were already talking about the concept and the way that artificial intelligence is going to impact the technology and what we do. So John McCarthy said that it is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs. It is related to the similar task of using computers to understand human intelligence, but AI does not have to combine itself to the biologically observable methods. And so I think that last part is really powerful, right? AI does not have to combine itself. And so I think the reason that some people fear or are skeptical about AI, because the possibilities are like endless. There's so much that it can already do. And imagine as more people learn it and more people begin to really research this area and make efforts to grow it, how big it's going to continue to expand and not go away. And so some of the goals of AI, there's two approaches. The first is the human approach. We want systems that think and act like humans. And then the ideal approach, we want systems that think and act rationally. And if you look at these goals of AI, you could see why somebody might be like, why are they coming up with a technology that is supposed to think and act like me, who is a human? But still, I would keep my same notion that we still need humans in place to be able to implement, sustain, and manage these AI technologies, these VR technologies. And another important thing to think about is, for example, if you type in ChatGPT, could you please help me come up with a creative icebreaker for this number of people in this type of environment? They're going to give you some ideas. A good thing about ChatGPT and AI is it's good for formulating ideas, but then you as the human can pick and choose what you use. You can remix it a little bit. You can refine it and modify it to meet whatever it is. But a big piece of AI is really as an idea generator, and then you as the human can add that humanistic touch to it and choose what it is you want to use. What do you not want to use? And so OpenAI's ChatGPT, big deal. I remember when it first came out, and I was like, there's no way I can just type this in and it's just going to produce, whatever it is you're asking. Us in career centers, this is a big deal. Even in higher education, it's a big deal, because how does this impact the way teachers teach? How does it impact the way that they create assignments for their students to demonstrate that they understand the content? But how do you kind of leverage this technology in a way that it's not used in an unethical way, but how can we maximize the use and teach students how to use it in a way that is ethical, but still allows them to think critically on their own and be able to implement and demonstrate that they understand the content of their academic programs. And so, of course, ChatGPT is a turning point in AI. They focused on a lot of natural language processing, but in addition to that, there are so many generative models that are learning the grammar of software code, natural images, and even other data types. Sometimes I'll put something in ChatGPT, and what I've learned is with ChatGPT, it is great to use, but you have to curate what it is that you're looking for. So you have to be very specific with the word that you use. You have to be very specific with the context that this idea that you're trying to develop is going to exist within. And you have to be very careful about the words. For example, the meaning of explain this and describe this are two different things, right? Or evaluate something versus summarize this. So there's different words that to some of us, they might seem like, oh, we could use these interchangeably. But using ChatGPT, what I've learned, you have to be very specific. And the more specific you are, the more accurate and aligned the response that they give is going to be, because you're telling this machine, this is what I'm looking for. But you have to be very specific in telling them all the components of what it is you're looking for if you want the response that they give to be focused and not just too out of the box. Or maybe you wanted to just get open ideas and you want it to be very vague and see what it comes up with. So that's the benefit of ChatGPT. You can be as specific or as broad as you want, and based off the input is going to determine what the ChatGPT outputs. So benefits of VR and AI for career centers. So a lot of us in career centers and even in higher ed period, and probably just across the industry, scalability is a very big thing, right? Because we want to reach as many people as we can. Here in higher ed, specifically at the Robinson College of Business, our career center provides support for 1,500 students. And so because of that, we have about a team of 7 of us. So 7 career center professionals have to ensure that 1,500 students, in theory, are market ready. They have opportunities to be put in front of employers and alums to build their social capital, and that we are guiding them, coaching them, and equipping them with what they're going to need to advance in their career. Because again, it's all about value proposition. And so when you think about scalability, you're thinking about how can I reach all the people, but how can I do it with saving time and saving resources? And so what I would suggest as a benefit of something like a VR lab within a career center or any type of higher ed institution is that if you can train student employees, such as student assistants, work study students, graduate research assistants, interns, volunteers, make it into an experiential learning opportunity, there are ways to actually provide virtual reality interview training without bringing on professional staff that have to be paid in a way that is a little bit different than the way you would pay a student employee. And so another benefit of VR and AI is that the environment is immersive. And so I know that remote interviews are a big thing, especially for screening rounds and preliminary interviews. They'll often start remote. And then as you get through the process, that might become an in-person interview, depending on the job, the company, and all those good things. And so it's very important that students know not only how to be productive and effective in remote interviews as if they were looking at a screen and chatting, but they need to remember how to do in-person interviews. How do they make eye contact? If there's a panel, how do they work the room so that all of their attention isn't just on one person? The loudness, the speaking pace, are they using filler words? So all those things are very important. And so it's up to us as career center leaders to allow students these opportunities to immerse themselves in environments that are going to be like the environments they are going to go to when they're interviewing for these career advancement opportunities. Another benefit, and I mentioned this early on, it increases the sense of belonging through presence in environments that are amenable to career readiness. One thing I love about virtual speech is that there is the job interview prep application, which I'll spend most of my time talking about, but there's like 14 other programs that align with not only what students should learn from career centers, but what they should be learning in higher education, period. So there are topics about DEI and business salary negotiation, and just public speaking in general, delivering powerful presentations. Many of these skills they'll need not only as a student, but as they go from college to career and navigate into the workforce, they're going to be able to know how to do these things. And so virtual speech has provided a myriad of opportunities for them to improve their communication in different pockets. And so I think that's really beneficial. Again, the AI, it curates the climate, the content, and the feedback for students and career center professionals. And so I'll get into specifically how virtual speech does this. But again, it goes back to the more specific you are in what it is you want to input, then the output is going to be based off that. And so there is possibilities to be very specific about the context so that when the responses are made or when the recommendations are made from artificial intelligence, it aligns and it's not so broad that you feel like it lacks that customization or it lacks that context specific focus that you might get from a person doing a mock interview in traditional methods. And then context specific feedback and industry organization specific interview questions. These are things that AI does, especially in virtual speech. The AI has been built in. I actually used virtual speech for a pilot in 2021, and it didn't have some of those AI components yet. So I've seen it before and after. And I'm really impressed when they added the AI because some of the, what's the word? Some of the reservations I got from people as I told them about VR, like, oh, it's really cool, the technology in school, it's immersive, but is the feedback context specific? Are we going to be able to tell them things that address context and not just how are they demonstrating themselves in the interview, right? But what is the quality of the responses they're giving? Is it in alignment with the question that's actually being asked? Is it in alignment with the context of the industry or the job role that they might be interviewing for? So all of those are key benefits for VR and AI in career centers. So Virtual Speech, it is the first training and development app of its kind available in the Meta Store, which I think is really cool. I learned this the hard way. I was trying to access Virtual Speech and I'm like, why is it not working? And then I realized they had moved the application into the Meta Store, which I thought was really cool because this means that the Meta company that is really driving and bought Oculus, which is one of the very first head mounted displays anyways, is really taking it far with this VR stuff. And so the fact that they recognize virtual speech as an application that can provide that training and development, I think that speaks volumes of the company as well as volumes of where the trajectory of virtual reality is going. There's been advanced improvement since establishing in 2016. I didn't use it till 2021, so I can only imagine some of the strides they made between 2016 and 2021. But the improvements that I have seen from 2021 to today are very immense. I think the AI was really the cherry on top and the only thing that could have really been added that it might have been missing. And so the fact that that artificial intelligence is built in, it allows the student or the career centers or anyone, even if they just want to practice on their own, to customize their VR experience in virtual speech by industry, by functional area or the type of role, the specific company, opportunity type, all those really good things. And then the feedback, it can be in real time as the student is actually delivering their content for their interview. And it also has feedback after the fact, so post interview. And I'll get into some of those screenshots as well. Another big thing, the data. Data is like a gold mine now, right? But more important than the data itself is the story that we can tell with the data. So what does this data mean to us? What does it mean when a student who has not great interview skills practices using the virtual reality, and we can measure their progress over time, and then we can demonstrate, because the student participated in this virtual reality, you can see that they improved their interview skills on these specific metrics. And virtual speech actually allows the data to not only to be collected, but to be accessed and maintained so that we then can use it to tell a story. A lot of times, if I want to get buy-in from my leaders about a new thing, especially technology or anything that involves money, they want to know the data behind it and if it's going to work. And so that is a key part that I think really.
Oh, I think we lost you. Oh,
I'm
you're
back.
back. Great.
Yeah, some reason it wants to keep going to Zoom, but it gave me a little message. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, I utilized virtual speech for pilot research with students. At the time, I just wanted really to do a pilot with about 10 students to see, does this improve their interview performance, their confidence, and does it decrease their anxiety? I couldn't make any conclusive thoughts about the anxiety piece, but one thing I did see is that students did improve in their interview skills, and their self-efficacy piece or the confidence in their interview also increased. And now, of course, I've used it for the dissertation research as well.
Oh,
All right.
sorry. Oh, sorry.
No worries. Okay. So as you see, I have this little screenshot here. And these are 3 of the like 15 programs that exist within virtual speech. But the one we'll really focus on is job interview preparation, because that's our focus today. Sorry about that. I don't know why it keeps changing my mic. So what the job interview preparation app does is it is what hiring managers seek and how to answer common questions. It allows students to craft answers to competency questions via effective storytelling. Again, that storytelling is so important. It enhances answers to unexpected questions. So some interviews, the questions might be the same. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about a time where you had to work with a difficult employee, things like that. But it could be a question that maybe they're not expecting or prepared for. Can you tell me something recently that our company did that impressed you? And if that student hasn't done that research or they've never been exposed to a question like that, they might be thrown off and not be able to answer it in the way that they should. It allows them to build authentic relationships with hiring managers. And the thought behind that is if we're improving the way our students communicate, communication is a big piece in relationship building. And so that is why this system allows individuals to improve their communication and help build those relationships, practice real interview questions, easily identify areas of improvement with feedback, and of course, increase their confidence in interview success. And so all of these are major selling points, if you will, of why one might engage in the job interview preparation app. Okay, so again, these are just some of the the benefits of there. You see that there's interview preparation, there's core and managerial questions, competency-based questions, company-specific questions, 180-degree video of what not to do. It's just expanded so much to provide different layers of exposure to these environments and different modalities of actually being able to learn how to interview without just the typical mock interview simulated experience. All right, so these are one of the biggest enhancements that happen that I think are just outstanding and really make it easy for me to sell this to some of my leaders. The AI built in allows us to allow a student for any company they might want to work for, or maybe they have an opportunity for, or it's their dream company, they can custom our interview questions based off the specific company. So here in the graduate business school, a lot of our students want to go to Deloitte, EY, the Big Four, Meta, Salesforce, all these huge companies that we can think of, big brand companies. And so many times their interview questions need to be curated for that specific organization because often those are the types of questions they are going to be asked, especially for the types of roles that our students go after, which are those mid-level leadership and above roles. So really not entry level, but those roles that require 3 to 5 years of experience. And so these employers want to know, do you know about my organization? Do you know some of our recent highlights? What do you know about our stats? What do you know about our values and our culture? And so by virtual speech, allowing the student to be specific with the company they want to have interview questions for, the AI then curates the questions that align with what that organization might ask. And I think that's really powerful. Another good thing is they have some companies built in already. So if a student maybe on their own, they can't think of one, but they can pull from this list and like, oh, I might want to work for that company. Let me try these. And so you have those that are already pre-populated, but then you also have those where you can just search that company. And then that's something else that I did not put in here. We as career center leaders, we have some customization abilities too, because we actually can upload our own interview questions that we know that employers typically ask. So there's just so much customization with virtual speech that really allows for that curated, tailored experience that a lot of people want while still achieving scale. Again, just some other customization features. You can see this is a screenshot of the different types of ways you can practice the interview. And then something that I think is really cool, if you look to the right, that's actually a TV that is on the wall in the interview room. And so it's imagined in opportunities where students have to give a presentation as part of their interview process, which is very common these days. And so you have the ability to, if you were actually in that room, to be looking at your slide deck and reading off your slides and delivering your presentation as if you were actually in person. Again, those small little details, they make this experience so much more customizable and curated that it really provides that experience for students to make it feel, for lack of better words, as real as possible. And then the automated feedback. So this piece is so crucial because it's important for students to practice interviews, and they do absolutely get value and progress from going through the motions of practicing the interview. But one of the key components of that is the feedback that they get, because the feedback is what they're going to use to tell them, what did I do really well in? And let me continue to expand on that. And where are some areas that I need to improve so I can spend more time strengthening those areas if I've already demonstrated that I have a competency in some of the other areas. So voice loudness, if you select in the virtual speech app for it to analyze while you're going through the interview, it is measuring these things as you're giving your answers to the interview questions. And so voice loudness is very important because we don't want students yelling at the interviewers, but we also don't want them so quiet that they can't understand. And voice loudness can sometimes attribute to what an employer perceives somebody in terms of their confidence level. And so many employers would like people that at least appear confident or can turn it on when needed, because those might be the type of people they want in their key roles on their team. Speaking pace. Some of us, like myself, sometimes I get really excited about what I'm talking about and I talk just a little too fast. And so even me, I have to make an effort to slow down, articulate some, allow for some deflection and inflection in my voice, and it really allows me to control my pace. And so students, it is very important that they're aware of their speaking pace. And so this great feedback not only tells them how many words per minute they're using, but it gives them a brief blurb about what does that mean? Because it's one thing to tell students, you spoke 144 words a minute. And they're like, okay, thank you. But is that too many words in a minute? Is that too few words in a minute? What does that mean to me? So I think it's really cool that they have that feature. All right, some other great feedback. Again, eye contact. Eye contact is so pivotal in communication. Eye contact room split. Many interviews include a panel of people. And so it's important that when they're working the room, all of their eye contact or attention isn't focused on one person, because even when the interviewer asks the question, it's still expected that the interviewee, when delivering their answer, they will focus some on the person that asked the question, but the other people on the panel are also listening. And so it's important that students be able to control their eye contact, even when there's multiple individuals involved. And then finally, filler words. I just said one just now, just that quick. So those are words that, just naturally we say and trying to fill space and time when thinking of our next thoughts. Students do the same thing. And so this is something that we want our students to know about. And so VirtualSpeech, the analysis tool, counts the number of filler words they use, which is really important.
It's funny that just before you started talking about filler words, you actually used one, because as you were talking, I was thinking, wow, he's really good at not using filler words.
Jinxed me. All good. Yeah. Anytime I start talking about filler words, for some reason, the ums just want to come out. I
Yeah,
guess they just
same.
want to make their appearance, but thank you, Sophie. All right. So we're wrapping up towards the end. So my research related to my dissertation, I explored the perceptions of career center leaders. And the reason I focused on the career center leaders is because in order for the students to be able to have the opportunity to practice virtual reality interviewing in their career center, us as the leaders first have to get the buy-in from our leadership to buy the technology, to implement it, to make the space. And so I wanted to ask career center leaders, what are some factors that would support the diffusion of these innovations or the implementation of these VR and AI innovations into your career center? And so some of the data that we received is buy-in from innovation recipients. So those are the students or clients that are benefiting from the interview practice using virtual reality. The innovation deliverers, so that's us, the career center professionals. Leadership buy-in. Do our leaders feel like it's worth the money? Is the squeeze worth the juice? Actually, is the juice worth the squeeze? So they want to know that if I pour whatever amount of money into it or whatever amount of effort into it, am I going to see a ROI on the interview preparedness of our students? And not only the interview preparedness, but how can we connect that data to employment outcomes to further demonstrate that not only does it improve their interviews, but it actually can be linked to what it is their outcome is, which is very important for colleges. We call it destination data, first destination survey, and it tells us about that value proposition. What are our students doing after they graduate? Budget, of course, if you have a budget, if you have money for technology, it makes it way easier than if you don't. You need people that are innovative and forward thinking, people that aren't scared of the unknown. Some people have a little bit of fear, reluctance about AI and what it means. And so you need those people that are innovative and forward thinking. And even if those reservations exist, the excitement and the opportunities that exist outweigh the reluctancy they might have. And then leveraging the technology, leveraging the people in place already at our institutions that kind of manage our technologies, tracking the usage and learning outcomes, training for those that have to deliver it, and then accessibility to the actual technology. Those are all factors that would support the VR and AI being diffused or implemented into career centers. So what are the barriers? I think that had I not put these bullet points up, I could have asked, what do you all think are some barriers? And a lot of you probably would have listed some of these same things. The number one response I got was budget, money, finances, fiscal resources, right? So having money helps because a lot of people love the technology, they love what it does, and they might even think that it'll work. But if the money is not there for them to use, then that can be a huge barrier. Delivery. How are we going to deliver this training? Do we have the space? Do we have the people in place? Where are we going to store this equipment? How are we going to maintain what the software and the hardware? When do they make a new model, right? This is Meta. The Quest 3 just came out. When's the Quest 4 coming out, right? Are we going to have to upload to that? So all of those are important things. Buy-in from the leadership, but not only the leadership, but the students. We think it's great and we want them to use it, but are the students actually engaging and coming to the office to use it? And if not, what does that mean for the pitch that we've made to our leaders that this will work for our students if we can't get the students to come in? And then, of course, buy-in from faculty as well. We know that faculty partnership and collaboration in higher ed is so important. Location and infrastructures, personnel, again, accessibility, and then incentivizing student engagement. As much as I would love students to be passionate about their career readiness and just have the initiative to like, I need to go work on my interview skills. Some of them need some incentivizing, right? And a lot of times that might not be ignorance or lack of concern for their career, but our students are overprogrammed. They have a lot of things going on, and a lot of times their time and effort is split into different areas. And so they have to find, where am I going to maximize my time, where it's going to benefit me for what I'm going through right now. And so incentivizing student engagement for anything in higher ed is a huge thing for us, not only as career centers, but other departments and even faculty.
And how did you find that you did incentivize your students, or how do you currently try to incentivize them?
So there's a few ways that we've learned that work in higher ed. The number one way is that if there is a faculty that's willing to collaborate to either give a few extra credit points or they somehow incorporate it into their syllabus that the students utilize the Career Advancement Center, that helps, right? Because while it kind of sucks on one end, anything mandatory is going to get them there because it's mandatory. And often students will ask you, if you invite them to something or encourage them to do something, sometimes their question is going to be, is it required? And if it's not, they might not come, and it might not be because they don't want to, but maybe it's just because of where their time is stretched. Another thing that works really well is that food. I know that sounds really simple. If you have, especially for undergraduate students, if you have an event and you say that their free food is going to be there, you can get students to show up. And so sometimes it's a matter of us, well, like I said, we want them to just want to do it on their own. Sometimes we do have to pull out some of the, the dog and pony show to get them there. And if that means we spend a few $100s on food, but they get there and they're prepared and they go out into the workforce and they're successful, then it's definitely worth it. But the number one incentive is if it comes from faculty. If a faculty encourages a student to do something, they're usually more likely to do it because that's the person they're seeing at least once or twice a week. They're seeing them for 16 weeks in a semester typically, as opposed to the Career Center staff, they may or may not see. And so that's some of the ways we've seen incentivizing work.
That makes sense.
All right, well, that is the end of my presentation. I want to allow for some more time for Q&A. I know we only have like 11 minutes for Q&A. So Sophie, I appreciate you throwing those few questions in there. Just want to thank Sophie and the VirtualSpeech team for providing me this opportunity, providing me the resources I need to complete my dissertation research. I want to thank Dr. Bobby Tickner, who is actually on this webinar right now. She is my chair for my doctoral committee. She's also my lifelong mentor since I met her in 2014 in a criminal justice undergraduate class. And so I appreciate her guidance, her mentorship, and just her support and being here. And then, of course, my Georgia State Robinson College of Business team, they're all very excited about VR, and we are exploring how are we going to use VR and virtual speech in our own department. I actually have a meeting today with our associate dean to give him a demo of virtual reality, and we're actually going to go through virtual speech, and he's going to try it for himself. So super excited about that. So we are all in on VR, and I'm going to continue to spread the word to push the awareness and continue to drive people to virtual speech because I think it is an amazing platform. And until I find something better, this is what I'm going to spend my energy and time on. That is a QR code for my LinkedIn. I'm very big on LinkedIn. Please connect with me. Feel free to shoot me a message. would love to chat with anybody and talk further about any of these ideas. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I'll just leave your QR code on the screen for a minute so people can scan it if they want to, and then I'll stop sharing. In terms of questions, so Dana has asked, is the technology mobile? Could it be brought to a tabling event for students to become aware of the opportunity to utilize this resource?
Yes, that is a great question. So the great thing about VR, especially with the advancements in technology, is that it's untethered. So you're not connected or hindered by a cord that's plugged into a wall as long as your device is charged. So it's very, and we've actually done it before, set up a table, even at, career fairs and things like that to get students interested in it. You could set up a few VR headsets and allow them to experience it. And because it's interview, all they really need is a table and somewhere to sit down, and they will be able to experience the practice interviews. So yes, that's absolutely possible. And it's actually coming to the GACE conference as well. We'll have Dana, if that's the Dana I think it is, we will have that at the GACE conference so that different professionals and career centers and recruiters can actually try it out for themselves.
Great, thank you. I think one of your colleagues has also left a question, but it's more of a comment saying, outstanding presentation, Phenix.
Thank you.
In terms of advice, so what advice would you give to people working in career centres who are starting from scratch with their VR journey? So they haven't used VR before. What are some of the things that you've learned along the way that you would advise them?
The first thing is, if you're going to pitch it to your leaders, you really want to come with some information and some research to back it up. There are sometimes we just want to plant little seeds, just ideas in our leader's head and then build onto them with time. But something that's cutting edge is this. If you have their ear and they're willing to listen and you can set up a time to chat with them, the more information you can provide them on really the things that they're thinking about, right? So what are leaders often thinking about? They're thinking about business solutions and how is this going to affect the entire organization and institution as a whole. So if you can come with some estimates of how much is it going to cost? How many would we have? Where will we put it? And this information doesn't have to be like final. It can be ideas or frameworks of plans that can always be refined. But I would say when you're taking it to your leader, because that is who you're going to have to get that buy-in from, usually in higher ed, at least at my institution, to get it approved. Come with the information and the data to tell a story of not only we should use this because it's AI and it's VR and this is what everybody is talking about, but how does it benefit our students and align with our strategic goals, our mission, our vision for our institution and for our students. If you can do that, that is one of the biggest things you can do. And of course, there's always people out here doing this that you can learn from. I've learned almost everything from Dr. Tickner and the research I've done on my own in my dissertation. So just being well versed in the information will help you, because if you have their ear and you have that opportunity to sell it, you want to be prepared because it could be your only shot. And so you want to just come with everything that you can to really drive the message home.
Great, thank you. And when I speak to clients or like people who are interested in starting with VR, one of their biggest questions is around the logistics. So how have you tackled that in terms of the logistics? Like, where do you store the headsets, for example? How do students access the headsets?
So we haven't implemented a full lab yet at Robinson. We're actually renovating right now, and it's one of the things we're working on. But I can speak to some of the logistics that happened at the VR lab at Valdosta State University, which was implemented by Dr. Tickner. And so it's a big enough room where I think about 8 individuals can be in there at a time. And Dr. Tickner has about 8 to 10 HMDs that allow them to all be able to do it at the same time. So in terms of like perfect picture, it would be perfect if there was a designated space that this is just the VR office, lab, area, suite, whatever it is you want to call it, right? Because it allows you to be able to keep those items there to add the additional components of TV so that you could screen mirror what students are experiencing. So if one student is experiencing the VR, you can screencast it to the TV so the other students can also engage and see what it is they might be doing. So in terms of logistics, you really want a designated space. Depending on how many headsets you're going to have determines the logistics. The Career Center at VSU has about 2. and they use an office that would have been like an interview room or an office where that employers use when they're visiting. And so they do that, and they actually have student workers check the students in. They get them hooked to the technology. They give them a real quick tutorial, and then they let them do their thing. So it is very feasible for this to be a student-led type of thing, so long as the Career Center full-time staff are providing the necessary training so that when they are giving that brief tutorial to the students how to use it, they can be able to show them the right way.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Bobby has also added to that. She said that she can now do up to 24 participants at a time at the Valdosta State VR Lab, and she has over 60 headsets, and she agrees the critical piece is a dedicated space.
Yeah, so VR Lab at VSU is growing. That's really great that they can, provide it to that many students, because again, it's about scale, right? Can we reach as many students as possible? And so the more you can provide, the more headsets you have, the more buy-in you have to get that technology. And again, that dedicated space really helps, because imagine, of course, you could have a movable cart that locks up that has plug stations for the HMDs to be, and you could lock them away and things like that. But imagine a dedicated space that even just the environment when students walk in, like I'm in the VR lab or I'm in the VR office, it really just, one, for aesthetics for that institution, but two, it just demonstrates to the students we understand the importance of this technology and we value it and we know what it's going to do for you. And so we've designated this space just for you so that we can make sure us as higher ed leaders have prepared our students to do what they need to do to be successful. So I hope that our lab that we have at Robinson can reach up to 24 people the way Dr. Tickner's can. But more to come on that. We're in that process, but I do think it'll come very soon. And I'm excited that my Robinson team believes in me and they believe in that we can implement this and that there is some value behind it.
Just going to spend the last couple of minutes talking a bit more about your research. So this is inspired by Bobby's other question. She says, great job, Phenix. I appreciate the work you're doing. What is the one thing you've learned that surprised you during your data collection?
I think I was most surprised that I knew there would be some challenges with feasibility, right? Because you're thinking about money, resources. But I didn't think it would be perceived as that unfeasible as it was. So many people found it acceptable, right? It's acceptable. I'm satisfied with it. I think it does what it needs to do. And many of them found it appropriate. It aligns with our mission. It aligns with what we do, what we're striving to aim for our students, what we're trying to develop in them. But a very low amount of them thought it was feasible. And so when you hear new technology and you think about it, it seems like it might not be that feasible. But when you break it down and give them estimations of, even if you just had 2 headsets, right, and 2 licenses, you're looking at about $1,000 max, right? And so, but sometimes $1,000 might be a lot to an institution. And so maybe that's something they can't get. So I think I was most shocked that I knew that there will be concerns with the feasibility, but my hope is that more people would think it would be feasible, because then would it help me drive the message of this is acceptable, this is appropriate, and it's feasible to do. But because there are some concerns or lack in that area, me as the researcher, I have to be honest and say, while I would love all 3 checks to be hit, acceptable, appropriate, and feasible, the reality is there are concerns for feasibility. But the benefit of us being aware of what those challenges are to making it more feasible, it allows me as somebody that's spreading the message and other people to be aware of the challenges proactively. So as we're going into these meetings, we're aware of some of the pushback we're going to get, and we can be prepared with some rebuttals, if you will, or some evidence or some documentation or data that basically suppresses some of those challenges so that you can facilitate a greater buy-in and lead to a successful implementation.
Did you find in your research that it's perhaps more feasible than people originally thought? Because again, something that I hear a lot is that people think the headsets are much more expensive than they actually are. Like they've really come down in price in the last 5 years. They've gone from $3,000 to $300. But people don't always know that.
Yeah, I do get that. And so one thing that I added to my research is actually giving them an idea of what the price is, because it's hard for them to say, do you think this will be feasible for you to implement based on the cost, if they don't know what those costs are. And so I think in the early stages and conversations, and even just in what I've heard in my different, because I actually met each of my data collection participants in person, and we had a brief orientation about VR and conversation about it before we got into the experience and the data collection. And some of them did think it was way more expensive than it was. And so I think when you tell them that actually it's about $300 per headset and about $100 to $200 for the license for a year, they're like, oh, really? I thought it was going to be like thousands of dollars. So I think it does help when we cushion it with it's actually not expensive as you think. Of course, the greater number of headsets you have, the bigger the space is, the price is going to increase. But even if they just wanted to do a pilot with just a couple of headsets, like the Career Center at Valdosta State is doing, it still allows them, the students, to experience it. And then if you pilot something and show that it works, the engagement is there, the outcomes are there, then maybe you can grow to make it bigger and get more money to have a full virtual reality lab, like the lab that Dr. Tickner has grown and implemented at Valdosta State.
Yes, perfect. That is a great note to end on. Linking everything back to this strategy and aligning it with the strategy of the institution as well, I think is what it all boils down to, really. So thank you so much, everybody who has tuned in, and thank you so much to Phenix for the informative session and for answering those questions. Where can people contact you if they'd like to talk some more?
I would say LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every day. If you scroll on my page, you'll see that I post a lot. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to chat further. If anybody wants to have some coffee chats, some Zoom chats, anything like that, we'd love to share more about it and provide any insights. So yeah, LinkedIn for sure would be the best place.
Okay, that rounds up on the questions. Thanks again, Phenix, very much. And hope everybody has a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.